Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Google session of the Tata Steel Calcutta Literary Meet. We've been having a number of sessions here. We had two sessions yesterday. One was to do with cricket. The other, which stole your hearts till last year night, was Sufa Mutkal. But today, we have some intellectual feast. While I begin this session, right at the beginning, may I call on stage celebrities who really need no introduction. May I call on stage Mrs. Jaya Bachchan, the Honorable Jaya Bachchan. Madam Shabana Azmi. Our very own Aloka Di, Mrs. Aloka Mitra. And to conduct the session, Ms. Shahana Chatterjee. Welcome ladies. Welcome to this Heritage Club. On behalf of the President and committee members, we must say we are delighted to have you here, and we are waiting to hear you deliberate on the subject on which you are no doubt experts, past masters. I would not really go into introducing these illustrious ladies. I mean, that would not only be a waste of time, but it might take more time than we have for the whole session. So I would just request the crowd to give them a usual welcome. Put your hands together, Ali. And just before they start, I would start with two quotations. I quote, "Content of TV is stereotypical. The shows still revolve around a preference for a son and kitchen dynamics. No women go to work. There's a complete absence of working women on the TV, and that is not the case in real life." Sharmila Tagore, quote unquote. So perhaps the ladies here will touch on this. And one more quotation before they get off to start. "It is extremely important to have positive role models for women. And it's sad that on television, we usually don't see that, even when so many writers are women themselves. I don't think that the only way we can counter the image of a girl is by making available as many positive images of empowered women as possible." Quote unquote, Shabana Azmi. So, with these, I hope we are in tune with what we are going to listen to today. It is true that the real India is moving forward, but whenever you open the soaps, you see women being slapped for arguing with the husband, being made to drink water washed by the water that has washed the feet of her mother-in-law, and such other derogatory things. Some will say, well, that's what happens. Even then, should we go on saying that, oh, it's all right? Or should we really stand up and strike back? Ladies and gentlemen, we are off now to a grand intellectual feast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to begin on a slightly different note. How important it is for us to recognize and celebrate our heroes and sheroes. No, these are not my words, but the words of the very famous American poet and woman icon Maya Angelou. And this is actually the first time I came across the word sheroes. I don't know what our very esteemed panelists make of the word sheroes, But before we get to that, a very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another session of the Kolkata Literary Meet 2015, entitled Here Comes the Shero. It is true that introducing such an eminent panel would actually be quite redundant and a waste of time. But I think I will still, in the tiniest of nutshells, formally introduce who we have with us on stage, who we all know and whose work we are all familiar with. We have Mrs. Jaya Bachchan, Jaya Mashi to me, and may I stick to that? Thank you. We have Shabana Azmi, Shabana ji. Arguably two of the finest actors of our times, not just in India, but indeed globally. We also have with us, as was said in the introduction, Calcutta Club's very own, Mrs. Aloka Mitra, Aloka Mashi. She is a pioneer in the development sector, working for the rights of women and children for a very, very long time. As many of you know, Aloka Mashi is the founder of the NGO Women's Interlinked Foundation, set up in 1990. The organization works towards implementing integrated women, child, and community welfare programs with a specific focus on literacy for women and children, prevention of violence against the vulnerable, and the rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration of victims of trafficking. Interestingly, Aloka Di has also been a member of the Film Censor Board, which I'm sure is going to throw up some very entertaining and illuminating anecdotes, but we'll come to that in a while. Before I sort of delve into what is going on now, today in cinema and television, and the kinds of portrayals that we see of women on these two media, at the outset, I must confess that I'm not a huge television watcher, so I don't know very much about the changing scapes, but I believe that there is a change for the better. But before we come to today, the here and now, I want to go back a little to the time when both you, Jaya Mashi, and you, Shabana ji, started your careers in cinema. Right from the very beginning, both of you have portrayed very strong, real, often feisty women characters who have not at all been the stereotypical woman that is expected sometimes of the portrayals that we see on screen. From your very first film, Jaya Mashi, when you were a teenager, you did a supporting role in Satyajit Roy's Mahanagar. It was such a strong social comment on women's economic emancipation. And you played the young sister-in-law of Aroti who goes out to earn a living when her husband loses his job and the family falls on dire financial straits. And later on, as an adult, when you debuted in Guddi, Rishikesh Mukherjee's Guddi, the story was a coming-of-age tale that we have all seen and loved, but it was focused on you. Now, these characters were all mostly from simple middle-class backgrounds, with none of the flag-waving or brow-beating feminism. How relevant do you think these women are for the modern young Indian woman today?
Are you, do you want to discuss Mahanagar or you want to discuss
Certainly.
Guddi?
Anything. We can start with Mahanagar if you wish to.
Well, I didn't understand what it was all about at that time, but I do. And now, Guddi, of course, I thought it was more about Dharmender than the girl. So, how relevant it is today, I don't know. I don't think Guddi is relevant today. But Mahanagar is.
Shabana ji, in your early films, Ankur, Nishant, these were also very strong social comments on caste, class, gender, feudal structures. And of course, we were all talking about Earth, which is a watershed in terms of the progress of women in cinema. Whether it is a Pooja in Earth or even a Hindu in Masoom, who ultimately takes control of the situation without making too much of a fuss, do you think that the woman characters that we see today in the so-called women-centric films, are they as easily identifiable with a Pooja or a Hindu or even a Guddi or a Milli that Jaya ji has portrayed? Or do you think...
If you will allow me to give a slightly longer answer.
Certainly.
To this. You know, it isn't a rarity that women-centric films were made. As far back as Dunya Na Mane, Mother India, so many of Nutan's films, so many of Vaidaji's films. There were a lot of films that were women-centric. But women-centric did not necessarily mean feminist. They were women-centric, and they were women-centric in the stereotypical roles as the all-forgiving wife, the sacrificing sister, the understanding mother, etc. I mean, if you look at the 60s, you had a film in which Meena Kumari ji was there, which was called Main Chup Rahungi. Chup Rahungi was considered a virtue for women. So just the fact that they were women-centric didn't necessarily say that they were saying positive things about women. And then came a very interesting phase and I'm talking about mainstream cinema largely, in which suddenly they said, enough is enough, and so we should have women who are empowered. But none of the complexity of what it means to be a woman was ever discovered in these films. And so you had इंसाफ की देवी, मैं जीने नहीं दूंगी, मैं मरने नहीं दूंगी, मैं ज़ख्मी औरत, मैं etc. etc. And I'm prone to saying that first we had Rambos and now we had Rambolinas. You had women in drag doing exactly what men were doing. It was left to the parallel cinema to study women in their complexity, show the grey, show the black, show the whites, and yet women. So it was really left to the parallel cinema to bring out women of strength and weakness, but women who really were women. The trouble comes, I'll tell you from where. In India, mythology plays a very dominant role in our culture. Not in a way of the past like it is in Greek mythology, but mythology today informs our understanding of what a hero and what a heroine is. So you have Ram as the perfect husband and Sita as the all-acquiescing wife, giving in quietly to her husband's wishes as the symbol of virtue and as the symbol of womanhood. Now, filmmakers, instead of reflecting the changing reality of women, delve into mythologies in terms of what is a hero, what is a villain, what is a heroine, because they think that that is the safest bet. But things have moved on. And today we realize that a woman in a stereotypical role is something that the audience does not want. And that is getting reflected in different ways, I think, which is a huge step forward.
Shabana ji, when you said that things have moved on, yes, they have to a large extent. But also you have the regressive stereotypical roles in the so-called very commercial, very successful films. What I wanted to ask you is that, do you think that the, if I may say so, the sheroes of today's cinema, you know, whether it be a Mardani or even a biopic on a sports icon like Mary Kom, have they become very larger in life in their sort of sheroism or heroism?
Not Mary Kom at all. Mary Kom, you have a positive role model right there, and it is through her eyes that you see the story. So it's not larger than life. It is somebody who we've seen achieving that. And that is very, very inspiring. See, the whole point is when we are looking at women and the way they are portrayed, then we have to accept that cinema has, not only cinema, this media has a large role to play in the shaping of what your heroes are. I'm not very sure that I'm very happy with the word Shero, because why is it that the main nomenclature always remains that of the man, and then you add a S and you say that she's Shero? I mean, why can't she be somebody in her own right? Why does it always have to be he for she, hero ka Shero? Let's discover words which don't have to do with appendages of other names.
Exactly, exactly. And Aloka, you have worked very closely with women and young girls of today coming out of very difficult situations. How do they perceive the heroines or the female icons and actors that they see on screen, or perhaps even more nearer home, right in their living rooms and bedrooms, the television screens?
If you are going to talk about the girls who I work with, they are coming from highly traumatized backgrounds. In fact, many of the films, Mardani, for example, reflects just that. And many other films, you have Chandni Bar, you have so many. Sharmila has done a wonderful film, then Mausam. And so what is important is that once they come out of that situation, they don't really want to face unreal world. So they don't want to face stories. They don't want to watch stories which are unreal, where you see the wife, the sort of kitchen-oriented woman, and they are wanting to see films like Mary Kom. They want to see films where women power. They want to see Gulab Gang, and they want to see where women have achieved something from very difficult situations. Because I was talking to them the other day after talking with you and asking them, what do you think of the films that you have been seeing? Which ones do you like the most? And they mentioned, they said Mardani, Mary Kom. Then I said, why Mary Kom? And so they said, well, Mary Kom, she's so focused. So you will be surprised about what actually they notice as being important to them. They said that she's so focused on achieving something. So in spite of all the hurdles, the problems, it's so similar to ours that the problems may be different. The whole situation is the same. So the girls today are thinking girls. Whether they are literate, illiterate, it doesn't matter. And they are wanting to watch films that also help them to think and learn some more and know about the life which is outside of theirs, but similar in some ways. So they're looking for this kind of connectivity, which is so important.
And they are finding it.
And they're finding it. And they're identifying themselves with those films.
Yes, yes.
You know, Shahana, Mary Kom is a wonderful film. I haven't seen it. But Mary Kom, the person is wonderful. I haven't seen the film. It's easy to pick up someone who's achieved and make a biopic. She will be an example. She's an example anyway. But I was just asking Shabana, the role that she did in Prakash Jha's film. I mean, it's one of my all-time favorite roles that she has done, and she was so wonderful in it. It was so quiet, but it was so beautifully done. And that is what, I mean, there the role said she was a woman who was suppressed. She lived a certain kind of a life. She said a certain thing by certain actions that happened, and she stood by it. And she carried herself so well. Bataiye aap.
No, in Mritidand, it was a film about a feudal family in which women are suppressed in different ways. And the character that I played was of a person whose husband unilaterally just decides that he's going to leave her and become a sannyasi for other reasons. And she becomes very ill after that. And then her caregiver, who's a person from a lower caste, Ompuri, they get into a relationship and she has the baby. And instead of wanting to abort the baby, she decides to have it. And all hell breaks loose. And ultimately, she's able to say in a very quiet, very kind of dignified way, she doesn't want to reveal who is the father. She says, "Ye bachcha mera hai." And she accepts responsibility for it because she says, I have played by the rules of the game. and I got nothing in the process, so now I'm going to do what I want to do. So what Jaya is basically talking about is that it doesn't have to be women that you single out because they are big achievers, but there are so many women in our society who in a very quiet kind of way are bringing about negotiating more space for themselves within the confines of the family that also need to be saluted, which I totally agree with her.
Thank you so much. Shabana ji, I want to ask you also, because we have films which are by and large predominantly hero-centric in the industry. When a film comes along like a Kahani, or say even a Dirty Picture, which suddenly does very well, very successful films, do you think this changes in any way the choices that the women today in cinema have when they are choosing the roles that are offered to them? Or is it still by and large the same kind of films that are being made?
You know, I think the success of these women-oriented films, I have to congratulate Vidya Balan for really, really being courageous in that. But then after which, if you look at Queen, if you look at Kangana Ranaut, and if you look at what Rani has done and what Priyanka has done, etc.
Yes.
I think what it does do is creates a hunger in the women who are portraying these roles to want to do something more than just be an appendage to the hero. That makes it possible because ultimately, see, film is about spending a lot of money. It's not like a painter where all you have to spend is the canvas and the paints and you can do it. It involves a certain amount of money and a certain amount of risk. And ultimately, if these films start doing well at the box office, more such films will be made. So we have to accept that the audiences also have a role to play. See, filmmakers are not here to transform society. They are here for a business venture. If tomorrow the audiences make them believe that it is films about empowered women that are going to run, that's what they'll make. If you make them believe that it's all kind of stupidity in the name of entertainment is going to run, that's what they're going to do. It's going to be only a small section of people who are constantly going to try and raise the bar.
And in this context, how important is the role of the writer? You know, the screenplay writers. What, because they are the ones who are providing the backbones of the scripts that are being then translated into cinema. Would you like to sort of...
I think very important. It's very important because they actually create the character. I mean, I don't know how Shabana prepares, but for me, when I hear the story from a writer, that's when my preparation starts and ends. And once I've liked it and accepted it, then that's it. And so it's very important for me to have a very good writer narrating a story to me, a role to me.
You know, I really, I have been extremely fortunate because I've got the opportunity, as has Jaya, of doing a wide variety of roles, which you would not normally find. And that, the credit to it goes to the writer and the credit goes to the director for thinking of these things and actually making them happen. Now, Javed Saab is sitting here and Salim Javed, if you look at them, you would actually believe that they only make male-centric films. But look carefully and look at the women in their films. It's not just the mother who is a central figure. You look at every single heroine of them, every one of them is a working woman. Every one of them is an individual in her own life, in her own right. Every one of them has broken the norms of the day. You don't notice it because you see that it's a big thing. But that comes from the sensibility of somebody like him who has respect for women and believes in equality for women, and so then fills his character, big or small, with the mindset that holds them in respect.
Absolutely.
I remember, मुझे पता नहीं जावेद साहब को याद है कि नहीं, जब जावेद साहब was trying to convince me to do Zanjeer, I didn't want to do that role. He said, नहीं आपको करना पड़ेगा, आप करिए. मुझे अभी भी याद है कहाँ फिल्मिस्तान में, आप और सलीम साहब. And I'd asked them, I said, why do you not have women as your central characters? Javed sir, you said something to me which I still remember. You said that I don't have inspiration.
और फिर उसके बाद बीवी मिली और फिर भी इंस्पिरेशन नहीं है, तो बहुत अफसोस की बात. तब तो बीवी नहीं थी मैं उनकी.
बट वही मैं आपको बताना चाहती हूँ. ही इज कन्विंसिंग मी टू डू जंजीर. और इतने अच्छे राइटर, अभी आपने कहा कि औरतों की बहुत इज्जत करते हैं, और मेरे मुंह पे कह रहे हैं मुझे वी डोंट हैव इंस्पिरेशन. कोई इंस्पिरेशन मिलना चाहिए. मैं तो गई ख़त्म, ये आई तब भी ख़त्म. जावेद साहब अब तो लिख दीजिए. हाँ, आई होप बोथ ऑफ अस सिटिंग हियर इंस्पायर यू अ लिटिल बिट.
A new script maybe. But Aloka, I'd like to come to you. You have been a member of the Film Censor Board. And
Firstly, I'd like to say that it's not a
Not a
censor
board.
board.
It's an
It is the
advisory
board
committee.
of film certification.
And it's
Censor board का मतलब
it's something
आए हैं
different.
काटने के लिए. It's a board of film certification.
okay, I apologize. The
used to be called
Board of
advisory
Film
committee.
Certification.
known as censor.
Commonly known as the censor board, and commonly known as doing a lot of villainous things as well. But what have been your experiences? You must have come across several instances where you've been personally quite horrified.
I want to say that I was fortunate enough to be a member years and years ago. So that was in the late 80s and early 90s. And however, I was a bit horrified about the kind of downfall in the kind of films that were being made here. It was not Hindi films that we were censoring here, it was the eastern region. And we then had Orissa, we had Orissa, and we had eastern zone states, we had Bihar, Bhojpuri films. And we did find that there was a huge tendency to rape, violence, and that was what's supposed to be saleable. And there was so much violence on women that we found it very disturbing. And we were quite strong women there. But afterwards we found it very disturbing remembering those horrific scenes. And when we started cutting some of them to make it palatable, I mean viewable, and even with an adult certification, then it became a battle of wills, and we didn't want that. So ultimately Orissa separated, and we had a separate censor board. But even then we felt there should be some guidelines on not controlling the stories. No way, that's not the point. The point is constantly showing women in as objects of violence or objects of rape. We were even told that the film won't sell unless we have a gang rape there. And in one film there were 3 rapes, and that was supposed to be extremely marketable. So these were some of the problems we faced during those years and found it very difficult. But then we had an extremely interesting meeting in Mumbai, where because we were certainly not experts and we never claimed to be, we went to Mumbai and had a 2-day workshop where I was fortunate enough to be in the august company of Mr. Raj Kapoor. Then there was B.R. Chopra and Shokti Shamanto. All the bigwigs, in fact, were there. And the first day, of course, they said, do away with censorship altogether. And the second day, they said, we understand your problem. And they reformulated the guidelines, and it was fantastic. So I would say that, yes, leave the cinema makers to work out their own self-regulatory systems. And some systems need to be there, that is something that was discussed at length. Can it be self-regulatory? And then they themselves decided, no, not totally self-regulatory, but let us have better guidelines which are clearer, which don't make it difficult for the filmmakers to pass through their films. We had a problem film here, in fact, Antarjoli Jatra, which made it to the international film festivals. But some of our censors didn't like it, but I stood up for it because it doesn't matter that it showed a woman, a child bride who was sitting beside her dying husband. Boshanto, our dear friend, was the hero, and he was like a 90-year-old sitting with a 15-year-old girl next to him, waiting for him to die. And that's what the society had decided, that she should be sitting there next to him, made by Gautam Ghosh. And, that was something really wonderful. That it, after all, reflected a time which was not now. So if we become feminists and we start saying, no films which reflect their time, then we would be extremely,
limiting to
yes,
stories.
It is restrictive. Why should you? You should not.
Shabana ji, you have done Sati, Aparna Sen Sati, where you were married to a tree. Now, if the board of censor certification decided that that was not right or it was regressive in terms of today's modern context, don't you think that is very redundant?
No, but I don't think that situation ever arose.
Exactly.
So we're just speaking in the air.
Yes.
The point is, I would just like to take this discussion a little away from the censors, except that I'll give you one example, where I did a film called Godmother, in which at a certain moment, I light a cigarette, and the censor board said, this has to go, this has to go. You can't be lighting a cigarette. I said, but in an earlier shot, my 4-year-old son is looking at me and I kill a man in cold blood. That's all right. That they weren't worried about. They were worried about the cigarette. So, I mean, you don't know how it works, but it also works. Yes. The point that I want to say is I think there's a lot of confusion today in terms of who an emancipated woman is. And there's a lot of confusion with that, Jaya, you'll understand. And then we look at the item number. Now, the item number is ostensibly introduced in the film, of course for entertainment and all that, but women, girls who are actually doing it, say, what's wrong? If John Abraham can show his body, why can't I? My question is that under the guise of saying the woman is celebrating her sensuality, which is fine, there should be a celebration of her sensuality. What is happening is she is being made to surrender to the male gaze and thereby allowing herself to be objectified and commodified. And this is a danger that you have to be very vigilant about, because the whole business of films is the business of images. When you show a woman's body fragmented into bits, so you see a heaving bosom, a shaking navel, a swinging hip, you, in fragmented bits, you are robbing the woman of all autonomy and making her surrender to the male gaze under the guise of saying that it's a celebration of sensuality. But how does the camera move? When the camera is moving, it is commodifying you and objectifying you. As compared to, let me give you another example of a film called Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, which was directed by our daughter, Zoya Akhtar. Now, there is a scene in which Katrina Kaif comes out of the water. She is a diving instructor. She's wearing a bikini. Never once does the camera go close to her or go close to her body parts. It just catches her in a mid-shot. She comes out dripping wet in a bikini. She wears her clothes and she goes off. Immediately, what you receive is this is a working woman who's doing her job. Zoya could quite easily have gone closer to her and gone to her bosom and gone to her legs and gone in, and it would have changed completely. So it is in the eye of the filmmaker and the intent of the filmmaker whether they're trying to vicariously achieve that or whether they are just showing something as is. I think that discretion is important for the director, and that discretion is important for the girl herself. I cannot understand how somebody is mouthing the lines, "मैं तंदूरी मुर्ग हूँ, मुझे गटका ले alcohol के साथ," and think that the sexy
this
thing
was
to
one
do.
of my questions.
I just cannot understand it.
where is the sense of responsibility of the young female actors? I mean, how much responsibility do they need to exercise in the choices that they are making about the lyrics that they are mouthing or the roles that they are playing? You still have, you know, like you said, the item numbers with certain lyrics, and films like The Rowdy Rathors, which do very well apparently commercially, where the heroine is described as a mal. And there are young girls who are working actors in the industry today portraying these roles. Where do you think the sense of responsibility lies? How responsible do the young working actors of today need to be? Jaya Mashi, would you?
Well, I don't know. It's so wonderful for us to sit and talk about it, discuss
True.
it. But people who come into the film industry, it's a huge struggle for them to make a mark. Now it's up to you. I mean, I can speak for myself, she'll speak for herself. I had decided that if I do not like a certain kind of a role, or if I'm asked to do a certain scene, I will not do it. I'll leave the film, and I've had problems in one or two films where I've fought with the director, I've walked out of the set. There were certain things that I was not ready to do. But if you're ready to do it, who's going to stop you? I mean, it's very difficult to say that how responsible they are or irresponsible they are. They are in an industry today which is really, really very, very tough and very difficult. So I don't know. I mean, it's up to them. It's a very personal thing. I would not like to comment
Certainly.
on somebody doing whatever they are shaking.
No, I would like to say that there is a responsibility. And post Nirbhaya, there was a lot of discussion where it was said that every section of society must think about how they are contributing to the image of the women. And of course, the film industry is part of that. And what is very important is self-regulation for the film industry. For them to themselves understand what they should do. Because you see, it's very thin ice. If you start saying कि नहीं ये गलत है, item number गलत है, कल को moral brigade आपके सर पे बैठ के बोलेगी या पहनो और ये मत करो और वो, and you cannot surrender to the moral brigade. So whatever comes must come from your, and for me, even for the girls who argue with me and say that no, I've got a good body and I want to show it off, I am saying let it be an informed decision. I am not going to dictate to you that this is what you should do. But be aware that when you do a song like that, it is leading to the sexualization of children, and there are 4-year-old girls dancing at all kinds of weddings to really, really bad songs. So be vigilant of the fact that this is leading to the sexualization of children, and whether this is something that you would like to do. Make your own choice, but let it be an informed choice.
So I'm sure you would like to add to that.
Yes, a very brief bit that we had these arguments over and over again that cinema does reflect real life. But if we are going to really force one issue or two issues, like, okay, the dance, the type of clothes you wear, those are continuously rammed down your throat. The young people who go and visit the cinemas, they are hugely influenced, because to them the cinema is an extremely exciting, extremely a kind of role models are the actors and the stories that happen. So what I have seen, what we were worried about even then, is that there would be a huge number of young boys who would be wanting to behave in a similar way to the kind of viciousness and maltreatment of women that was going on in the movies. So the self-regulations that we were talking about, I think it's very, very important, and the opinions can be created within the film industry itself. It doesn't have to take an outsider or a social worker to come and become an activist within them, because they know best how to make their films work.
You know, if a girl refuses to do a certain dance or refuses to wear a certain kind of clothes, the captain of the team will not even blink an eyelid to change the. So where is her choice?
And that, in a sense, is a larger
Where is her
reflection
choice?
of the
I mean,
where was
choices
your
in society.
choice?
My choice was that I didn't want to do. I couldn't do it. I was too inhibited to do something like this. I just couldn't do it.
और कर सकती थी तो करती? बिल्कुल भी नहीं. No chance.
But what I am saying is, हमारे वक्त में we didn't have this choice. But आज
And you had the
it's
choice
very
to say
difficult.
no.
Sorry,
You
I'm
had
not.
the choice to say no. I mean,
Well, you never had the choice to say no, but what you could do is say that, look, I'm happy with this, I'll go home. I don't need to make pots of money.
yes.
I mean, it was up to you. And I
Absolutely,
think today times have become, everything is so commercialized. Everything is, I want this, I want that branded bag, I want the branded shoe. Girls do all kinds of things. Why only in cinema?
That's true.
I mean, all over. I mean, I don't want to talk about incidents. So these girls want.
Instantly things
Yes,
that
I
they
remember
can-
that
yeah.
when I first went to the institute, my professor said, why do you want to become an actor? Why have you come to train? If you have come here because you want to buy a car and a fridge, please go back home. Because I will not be able to teach you how to buy those things. So this is what these girls have to decide, that I'm ready to do it. I will not dance like this, I won't wear clothes, and ask the filmmaker, why are you giving me these clothes? This is my role. Why should I be standing in the middle of the water, freeze in a bikini? I'm not taking names of any movies.
But you know, interestingly, Jaya, actually, today's day has changed in terms of the portrayal of women. Okay, earlier there were very clear divisions between the vamp and the heroine, because we had this clear thing about the Madonna and the whore. And the vamp had a very important role to play. Interestingly, because of our own history of colonization, the vamp was a foreigner with blonde hair and blue eyes, so that you didn't have to think your Indian was a vamp and you could happily lust
the
after her.
Western
और
values,
आपकी
yeah.
जो हेरोइन थी वो तो बिल्कुल सफ़ेद साड़ी पहन के एकदम सती सावित्री थी. बहुत clear divisions थे. Over the years, these divisions have started disappearing. And so the woman now, interestingly, is also getting shades of grey. And those very clear divisions of the Madonna are changing. So what is being required today of the heroine was really just the domain of the vamp. It is now becoming part of what she has and what she can give. But I'm not saying that you have to say no to all the numbers, but you can take care कि ये कान में क्या loves पढ़ रहे हैं, बस ये loves पे. You can do the same kind of thing, but be careful about the words that are being perpetuated and the kinds of actions and gestures that you're doing. I'm sure you can exercise that much
Shabana,
caution.
don't you disagree with the title of a film called Mardangi? Mardani. What kind of a title is
It's
that?
like what Shabana ji said, Sheroes. Why do we always have to have
I mean,
the male
it's such
as
an
the
objectionable
prototype?
title.
Absolutely.
Why?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree
I mean,
with that.
if you see Gulabi Gang, or if you see the
Yes.
BBC documentary
yes,
on
Gulabi Gang. Yeah.
yes, I mean, look what she did. She didn't have to be. I mean, actually, if you see the documentary, you will realize she's an emancipated woman.
True.
She has decided she leads a certain kind of a life, but look what she's doing.
Absolutely.
She didn't ever in the documentary say that
I'm a
मैं
man.
मर्द
I need
हूँ.
to be a man. That's true. And
What
I
is
don't
this?
want to.
What
you
is
know,
a man?
We are so, I think, inching towards the end of the session, but I will open it out to the audience in a while. But I don't want to end on a note of despair. So I do want to ask all of you, all three of you, that where do you think Indian cinema is heading in terms of the future? What do you see in terms of the roles that are written, the scripts that are written, and How do you see the woman in Indian cinema in the near future?
I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I feel that the roles are becoming substantial in films that are women-centric, but even within the films themselves, like I have said earlier, that working women are part of the social fabric of India, whether it is in rural India or whether it is in urban India. 10 years ago, if you saw Hindi films, you would believe that Indian women only wear yellow chiffon sarees and dance in the Alps. That's all they do, and they wait to get married. But today, even in like gangster movies, the women are working. So that is inching itself forwards. And I think there is a greater understanding within the women artists themselves, where they are demanding more meat, if not necessarily in terms of the length, but definitely in terms of what the character is. I think it's a very important time in Hindi cinema because roles are being written for all age groups. Earlier it was impossible. At 30, that was the end of a woman's career. But today the roles are opening up and they are available. So I do think that happy times are here. And I tell you why I also think happy times are here, because the advent of the multiplex has thrown up the choices. You see, why did we have a certain kind of film in the 70s and the 80s? Because the intent of the producer was to cater to the lowest common denominator, because you wanted to get the maximum number of people in the audience. Today, it is possible to cater to a certain section of the audience and still make your money through your multiplexes, through urban centers. There are films which don't depend only on the lowest common denominator, and I think that is opening up the way for lots of different films that are also being made.
Jayamashi, what do you think?
Well, I'm very hopeful. I think this is a time where, you know, we are looking at different kinds of cinema. We are sitting here and saying this is not right, that is right, one should do this, one should do that. We're talking about working women, everything. I have hope. Well, I'm an optimist, basically. Secondly, I think a new trend that has started is people have started taking subjects from published literature in our country, Indian literature or even
Shakespeare.
literature, yes, of course. And I think that's a wonderful trend, because once we go back to literature, we will naturally go back to a lot of things that should be done the way it should be done.
And far more layered in terms of characterizations.
Says a writer's daughter.
Yes, of course. Aloka Di, do you watch? Are you a film buff?
I can't say I am now, but I have been before, and I do watch the TV quite a lot.
Okay.
So maybe we can touch a
Yes,
little
of
bit
course.
on that. But I must say, I agree so much with Jayaji that taking stories from the old authors. For example, 100 years ago, my uncle Nitin Bose and family, I mean the Debuki Bose, that family, the three of them, they, Mr. Bodua, they took films like Nauka Dubi and others from real famous authors, and they turned it into women-centric films, in fact, and they were excellent. So if we could have some proper literature, good literature being reflected in films, I think that would make a huge impact, because that can be modernized. All those films also can be made very modern and made into hugely popular movies. Now, I would say the TV I've been watching, initially I was absolutely horrified because they were very much kitchen-centric and women kind of fighting amongst each other in the house. It was really horrible. And that is because we did fight about the Balika Vadhu and so on, which was really impossible and reinforcing all the bad things about women. Now, recently I find it's all changed. And I watch that a lot because everyone is watching it. And the serials, I must say, are being changed by the authors after all. So the authors are conscious also that if they write stories which are not going to be palatable for the average audience, then they are going to lose out. After that, no one will take their stories. So these are, I feel very hopeful situations, and I'm totally in sync with my very learned ladies here, that there is a lot of hope for the future. I really look forward to very exciting times where we discover more and more about each other, in fact.
I think this is as good a juncture as any to open the discussion out to the audience. If anybody has any questions pertaining to the topic, do we have any roaming mics? Yes, there's a gentleman there. Is there any microphones?
I don't think there's a mic. I think you probably have to come up.
I've just sent the mic down.
सवाल पूछ लें, आप सवाल पूछें, आपका रिपीट कर देंगे.
There is a mic going to you just now. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Shubhendu Chandar. I am a member of this club. I have two questions. The first question is that with so much of information, with so much of what you call anything of everything is available through the internet, plus the influence of the Western films, the Western magazines, everything. What is the role that remains for the Film Censor Board or Film Certification Board, as Shabana ji has mentioned? That is my first question.
I think let's take that first. Shabana ji, would you like to?
Well, you see, we have taken up our system of film certification from the British system, whereby you have people from society who compromise members of the film certification board, and then it goes on and so forth. Now, this is in itself inherent with certain problems, because we all know that every time the political dispensation of the day changes, a new set of people are brought in. So you cannot subject the morality of an entire country on the political dispensation of the day. So there has been a section of people who have been saying that we should actually do away with our present system of the film certification and do it like in the USA, where every single film is given to its own body of people and they themselves decide. Now the filmmaker decides that I want this film without a single cut. So he will then have to accept that it will be an X-rated movie. That means he himself is voluntarily cutting himself from an audience which he knows is less than 18 years and they cannot see the film. So he himself or she herself subjects herself to the cuts, or says, I don't want the cuts, I want the certification. Which means a kind of self-regulation where the filmmaker decides rather than somebody of a political dispensation who is going to decide कि ऐसा होना चाहिए कि वैसा होना चाहिए. We haven't agreed to that system, but I think we should be working towards it. Within it, I think in the present film censor certification, what it means about the portrayal of women, of violence, of communalism, of all these things need to be defined. And I think that there was a very intense group committee in which Javed Saab was also there, and they went all over the country and got this together, but I don't know what has happened. Like all commissions, it is just resting somewhere.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the second part of my question.
Okay, please.
This is regarding the films. How much influence does the film have on the society? And if you think that it has substantial interest, substantial influence, then are we doing sufficiently to change the society?
You know, I think it is an individual choice, and I grew up in a family that believed art should be used as an instrument for social change, and so that's the kind of cinema I have done. But I think it's perfectly valid that somebody else would believe that cinema is a means of entertainment, and that's a completely valid point of view, that I want to make films just for entertainment. My thing is that you must then say, let's redefine entertainment. Why does entertainment have to be crudity, vulgarity, all of those things? Why can't it be a different kind of entertainment? So I don't think anybody can dictate to anybody else कि ये मुझे अच्छा लगता है इसलिए आप भी ऐसे करिए. The whole point of democracy is that you have to have dissenting voices, you have to have different voices, and like you can read pornography or you can read Shakespeare, you should be able to watch any kind of film that you want to watch, and then you make a choice and reject the ones that you don't like. But I think that if it can be used to bring about social change, then it needs to happen within the mainstream. Because if you're doing it within what is called the art cinema, then you're preaching to the already converted. So if you are bringing about a change in the perception of women, for instance, I think it needs to seep into mainstream cinema, and not necessarily only a woman-oriented film. I find it very strange when women say, why do you want to call me a woman filmmaker? Why don't you just call me a filmmaker? I should hope that because you're a woman filmmaker, you will be informed by the female gaze. I'm not saying feminist gaze, I'm saying female gaze. It doesn't mean that because you are a woman filmmaker, you must make films only about women. You can make a crime thriller, but the way you look at it, hopefully should be different from that of the male. That's what I think.
I think there was a lady over there, right in the front row. Can you please pass the microphone to her? We'll take this question and we'll take another question before we wrap up. Right in front, please.
I'm a member at this club. I don't
Can you
really
just speak
have a
into the mic, please? We can't hear you.
I'm a member here. I don't have a question, but I want to narrate one recent film, one small character in that film, which is Bomkesh Phirelo. It's now going into the theaters now. And there is this lady who plays Meghraj's wife, and she's actually a sex worker from Delhi, and she enters into this household in Calcutta, and as Meghraj's wife, but she's not Meghraj's wife, she's just an acquaintance. And then she claims in the movie, she tries to build relationships with any man in that household in her desire to move up the social ladder. And she asks a question, when society did not give me this right to lead a life, a normal life, like any other woman in this household, what is wrong if I try to develop a relationship and move up the social ladder and try to lead a normal life? It was a very small role, but this particular sentence and the role played by this lady, I thought that I should share it in this audience because it is very relevant, and we do not notice these things when such small things are played in such movies. We are all very much into Bomkesh's role and everything, but in today's context, I think what this lady said was very relevant. Why don't I have that right to move up the ladder, to lead a normal life? What is wrong in it?
Next question. Does anybody... there's somebody right at the back. If you can just stand up, maybe the person with the mic can see you. Yes, the gentleman right at the back. If you can pass the microphone, please.
आप सामने आके बोल दीजिए.
Have you got a mic? If you can come up in front, please. Yes.
Hello, hello.
Can we have the question, please?
Yeah.
Yes.
To Jaya ma'am and Shabana ma'am, My name is Saurav Kumar Das. I am working in IBM, but parallelly, I am into Tollywood movies also, short roles. Due to work pressure, I can't do big roles. I have one question only. Is theatre necessary to do full-time acting? Yeah, I have to go to working, sorry.
This is not very pertinent to the topic that we've been discussing, but because Shabana ji has done so much work in theatre, and I know you have also, you have done a play. I mean, theatre and films, what is the connection? I think he wants to know whether does he need to do theatre to become a film actor.
Yeah. Is theatre necessary?
I think theatre should not be used as a stepping stone to film. Either you want to be an actor and want to do it in every medium, whether it's television or theatre or film, or you want to be a film actor. But to use theatre as a stepping stone to film, I don't think will work. And I think it's very important that people who want to be actors should do it only if they will die if they can't act. Don't do it because you like your face. Don't do it because you can dance. Don't do it because you have six-pack abs. Do it because if you didn't do it, you would die, because it's a very, very, very tough profession, and a lot of heartbreak comes your way. And so you really should do it only if you're just dying to do it. That's what I think. Jaya might have a different point of view.
No, I think training is very good, it's very important. And whether you go to an institute and train or you train yourself in theatre, but nothing is compulsory. The most important thing is you want to be an actor, and how to get there is what you have to think. Not because theatre will be a stepping stone, but theatre will be a training ground for you to develop as an actor.
I think we've completely run out of time, but I'd like to thank Mrs. Jaya Bachchan, Shabana Azmi, Aloka Mitra for talking to all of us here today, and thank you all for being here. Good night.
On behalf of the Calcutta Club and all the sponsors, I would like to thank the dignitaries on the stage. It's been very meaningful, informative, and excellent evening adda that we had. I would also like to thank the dignitaries present in the audience, and of course, all the members and guests for making this evening a grand success. May I request our First Lady, Mrs. Rajshri Groho, to please come over to present some mementos to the dignitaries.